by Tristan Harris and Asa Raskin. By the way, Asa Raskin is Jeff Raskin's son. Jeff Raskin was the inventor of the Macintosh. Thought that was a nice side note.
Gotcha.
But these two are looking at some of the dangers of large language models, misinformation and whatnot. And they're gonna go over that in this presentation they've been giving around the world recently, even meeting with the president and everything. So let's let them introduce themselves, and we'll kind of go along here.
Sounds good.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome. I'm Katie Cassetta. I'm the Associate Director of the Ideas Festival. When my colleagues and I first started doing research about generative AI in anticipation of the festival, it felt like drinking out of a fire.
So we're going to talk today about artificial intelligence, specifically the sort of latest explosion in AI. And there's lots of positives that are associated with AI, including the ability to make AI music videos. So maybe we'll start with that.
Yeah. So, show a video. I made this video not this last January, but the January before, and every image in it is, of course, generated with AI. Like a human being made 0% of these images. And I think we'll just start here for a second. So, here we go.
Bring the lights down.
Shadow candy rearrangements. I am dying to be patient while they're watching entertainment. So I'll let go of all that I know. Dead dreams and submarines adrift in the cold, and I'll find home at the end of the road, waiting to see what unfolds.
It's actually the first time I played with an AI system that actually made me feel something. But the reason why we start here is there's a very curious effect that we noticed, which is as we were trying to describe to reporters the systems that made this and what was about to happen with synthetic media, we describe exactly how the tech worked. You type in text, the AI creates an image that has never been seen before, and then reporters would nod along, and at the end, they would say, okay, but where did you get your images from? And it wasn't like, oh, dumb reporters. It was noticing a kind of rubber band effect, where because this technology is so new, if your minds are anything like ours, you sort of stretch them out to understand what it can do, and then you sort of turn your mind for half a second and it snaps back. And we wanted to name it because if your minds are anything like ours, throughout this presentation, especially when the presentation ends, you may noticing your mind snapping back and be like, but where are the harms? Like, is this really going to happen? I look out, the day is a beautiful day.
I just wanted to point out real quickly that this is a little bit of the response that we got from our webinar yesterday, where people were still asking, where does the information come from that a large language model is spitting out when you prompt it? I think this is an interesting way of characterizing it to kind of help get across kind of what's really going on in the background.
Right. Definitely a good point.
And we just want you to mark that and note the rubber band effect.
So Asa and I co-founded the Center for Humane Technology, which is really, we're a nonprofit organization that has been working to catalyze a humane future, to harmonize technology with society. You may know our work from social media and the social dilemma. And in this presentation, you're going to hear about a lot of the dark side of AI. But we want to assure you we are very aware of the good side. In fact,
exactly. So the other project I work on, been working on it since 2017, is using AI to translate animal communication, like break the interspecies communication barrier. It's incredibly fun. And I think the reason why I bring it up is that we recognize the very real benefits of AI. And our goal is to say, how can we realize those benefits of AI? Because it's very hard to realize them if they land in a broken society.
And maybe we should say before we go to the next slide that the reason that we're doing this presentation is because people, back in January, February, Aza and I got a call from people inside of the major AGI companies, people who are building AI, OpenAI, Anthropic, Microsoft, et cetera. And they told us that basically there was going to be a 10x leap in capabilities when GPT-4 was coming out. And then there was going to be another 10x capabilities after that. And that the world was not ready, and that this was being released in a way that they thought was reckless, and that the safety teams felt that this is not going at a pace that we can get this right. So we looked at ourselves and said, okay, even though we worked on social media and all those issues, we thought there were people working in AI safety for a long time, but they were asking for our help to raise awareness. And so we sprung into action, we put together this presentation, and have been racing around to Washington, D.C. and so on to try to activate people. And the reason why, something that fascinated us when we first did this research, is a stat from a survey, which is that this is a survey that was done actually of AI researchers back in August of 2022, before ChatGPT came out, before GPT-4 came out.
This is the one that everybody
which is that
cites.
50% of the AI researchers surveyed believe that there is a 10% or greater chance that humans go extinct or are disempowered from our inability to control AI. Right? This is a pretty grim stat, right? It would be like if you're about to board an airplane, and the guys who are making the airplane say, if you get on this plane, 50% of those engineers think that if you get on this plane, there's a 10% chance that the plane goes down. So if this is the case, how did we get here? How do we actually avoid this trap?
And just to note that
I just wanted, I've seen these guys talk about this a couple times, and I get where they're coming from because they are looking at some of the darker things, but I just don't agree with the analogy that AI is like a plane that's destined to crash. It just doesn't make sense to me. But we don't know, of course, but yeah.
if you think this particular stat is cherry-picked, there was another survey of other researchers that published in top journals, and they said, what is the % chance that humanity, like that a catastrophe befalls humanity at the level of nuclear war, global nuclear war, or worse? And they responded with a 36% chance. Right? So these are the people closest to the metal. But as you say, how do we get here? These are the rules that I wish I knew when I started my career in technology. Knowing these rules really helps you predict the direction that technology will actually be deployed in the real world, so you don't get stuck in these stories of what it might do. Here they are. 1, when you invent a new technology, you uncover a new species of responsibility. And it's not always obvious what those responsibilities are. I'll give you 2 examples. 1, we didn't need the right to be forgotten to be written into law until the internet could remember us forever, right? Surprising. What should HTML and JavaScript have to do with the right to be forgotten? Or 2, we didn't need the right to privacy to be written into law until Kodak started producing the mass-produced camera. And then it took Brandeis, one of our most brilliant legal minds, to invent the concept. It's not in the original Constitution. Okay, so that's rule number 1. When you invent a new technology, you have to scan the environment looking for the responsibilities that you've just uncovered. And then 2, if the technology confers power, you will start a race for people running to use that power. And then 3, if you do not coordinate, that race will end in tragedy. And these rules really came out of our work on the social dilemma, the social media problem.
So how many people here have seen the Netflix documentary, The Social Dilemma? Okay, a good, maybe half of you. So this was a film that came out in 2020, and was really the premise of it is that when I was at Google as a design ethicist, I saw that there was this race for attention, that Google, Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, et cetera, TikTok are all in a race for your attention. So they started this race to the bottom of the brainstem to get our attention. So who's better at addicting you, getting your kids addicted, creating virality in news, et cetera. And that was really what we saw as the key diagnosis between what was going wrong in technology and social media. And you can think of social media as really first contact between humanity and AI. Now, why is that, right? So there you are, you open up Twitter, and you flick your finger, you just opened up a supercomputer pointed at your brain to calculate what's the perfect next tweet to show you. And that's a supercomputer, an AI, that's calculating based on what is most likely to keep you scrolling and engaged. Same thing on TikTok, same thing on Instagram, et cetera. And that was enough with that first contact with AI to create this whole litany of harms that many of you know.
I might even add recommendation engines were even bigger on Amazon before they were on social media. And so I think there's a lot of kind of manipulative things that AI has been used for to kind of keep you on a site, keep you buying products. Hey, you search for shoes. Are you going hiking? Here's a pack, and all those kind of things. And I think the social stuff, it just kind of bubbled out of that.
Right.
Information overload, addiction, doom scrolling, influencer culture, sexualization of kids, which angle makes you look the best, online harassment, shortening attention spans, and the unraveling of shared reality, because giving each individual person the news that most engages them breaks that shared reality that democracy depends on. So think about this, that a very simple technology that's just curating, an AI that's curating which post to show you, could have all of this damage with a very subtle misalignment. And this is going to be really critical because, oops, you go back?
Oh, sure.
Do this quickly again. This is going to be really critical because as we head into second contact with AI, which we're about to head into, we have to think about what went wrong in first contact. So in first contact, we lost, right? Humanity lost that contact. Now, how did we lose? What were the stories that we were telling ourselves? Well,
here, by the way, a lot of our friends are the people that created the social media companies, Instagram, etc. And so we know intimately the stories that they told themselves and the world about their benefits, right? So we've heard social media gives everyone a voice. That lets you connect with your friends, lets you join like-minded communities, or it enables small and medium-sized businesses to reach their customers. And note, all of these things are true. But lurking behind them, sort of imagine this like face for, oops, there we go. Lurking behind that story were a set of problems, and these problems sound very familiar because they're the ones the press often covers of, well, it was addicting us, creating disinformation, misinformation, creating increasing mental health crises, polarization, censorship, and free speech. But even behind these, because these are actually symptoms, they are epiphenomena of something deeper, which was the race for attention, which we coined as the race to the bottom of the brainstem.
And as it was racing to basically under this logic of maximize engagement, right? So it's not really about let's get angry at Mark Zuckerberg for the things that he did, although Facebook did plenty of things that are wrong. He and the other companies are all caught in this race. So we could predict in the future, what is the world going to look like? It's going to look more addicted, outraged, polarized, narcissistic, validation seeking, because we know that they're all competing for engagement. And this logic of maximize engagement rewrote the rules of every aspect of our society. Children's identity and sense of self-worth becomes run on how many likes did I get, right? Our politics get run in election campaigns are run through the logic of what content can I post that's most engaging. National security, media and journalism, clickbait economy, right? So this kind of took the key organs of our society and it held them hostage.
Matt, I think this might be a good spot where we could add a little something from the news publishing industry. Especially as it regards the engagement side of things, because
right.
What he said is they've kind of got a monopoly. You can't reach your customers if you're not on Facebook. You can't have a teenager with a healthy sense of this unless they're sharing and get likes and all this. And we have the same thing. I mean, getting views on YouTube is something that you get some satisfaction out of.
Right. And so I guess you're saying this relates to local newspapers in the sense that they're not chasing.
Well, I would actually say that I think they're feeling the same locked in thing. That's why they're like, not all of them, but a lot of them have been relying on Facebook, and we try to get them their new website and get things back under their control instead of just being encompassed by this engagement behemoth in this illustration, where it gets lost. You lose personality that way. You just become part of the whole economy.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, they have completely conned us on like creating this value out of nothing with this term engagement. Like you can literally buy likes, which are just
Yep.
I mean, sometimes they're bots, but they're just
or targeted
users'
ads.
Actions.
Yeah,
Exactly.
I mean,
Right.
because it's like it's supposed to be you think community, but community at a 5 billion person scale is just
Right. It's kind of it's a mutant freak. Yeah, like the picture. Exactly.
Exactly. And every decision that the algorithms are doing are basically keep you on the site, keep you looking at ads. And if they have to make people mad at each other or do this or do that, they don't have any morals that are preventing them from doing so.
Yeah, it's an unanticipated consequence of just maximizing for engagement. Definitely.
And so as this transitions, as they transition into how this applies to AI, I wanted to kind of contextualize their response to the social thing, because I think it really helps inform their take on AI as kind of like an super upgraded version of what we were dealing with just with social media. So I'll go ahead and continue so we can see what they have to say there.
Sounds good.
And the reason it's been so hard to regulate social media is because social media became entangled with our society. And now it's been really hard to fix that misalignment. So as we head into second contact with humanity and AI, we have to ask ourselves, did we fix the first misalignment with social media? We did not.
We should just name, because we haven't defined it yet, what is second contact?
Yeah.
First contact, curation AI. Second contact, creation AI. We've gone from choosing what you see to creating what you see. So it's a much more powerful technology. So we should expect all the ways that the misalignment has not been solved to make the problems that it creates exponentially worse. So let's run through this with the new technology.
So what are the stories that we're telling ourselves about AI, right? The new release of ChatGPT, GPT-4. How many people here have used ChatGPT? Okay, just about everyone in this room. What are the stories we're telling ourselves? Well, AI is going to make us more efficient. It's going to help us write code faster. It's going to help us solve impossible scientific challenges, and it can do that. It's going to help us identify new drugs, solve climate change, and of course, it'll help people make a lot of money. It'll unlock a lot of GDP growth. And these stories are all true. They're real stories, but much like in the past, hiding behind that is this kind of evil mask, and people are pointing out, well, wait a second, what about AI bias and fairness? And those are real existential issues for people. What about AI's taking our jobs? Or Kevin Roose at the New York Times, where the AI is sort of making him break up with his girlfriend. There's these very sort of dark components lurking in the background, but behind that even, what we want to focus your attention on is this other kind of race again. Remember that second rule of technology. If the technology confers power, it starts a race. So what's the race in AI? It's a race to deploy capabilities into society and outcompete the other guy. So OpenAI is competing with Anthropic, with Google, with Microsoft to deploy their thing as fast as possible, because if they deploy it faster, maybe they'll win that race. So we're going to get into, basically for this next portion of the presentation, the dark side of what can happen if we don't coordinate the race that ends in tragedy. You get breakdown of trust and truth, AIs that can find loopholes in law, automating religions, exponential blackmail, revenge porn, automated exploitation of code. We'll get into this, don't worry. And what we want to tell you is that I want you to notice that everything we're about to talk about in this presentation, we're not going to talk about sci-fi scenarios where the AI makes humanity go extinct. That's a big debate that's going on. Part of why we made this presentation is that you don't need the AGI apocalypse to be very concerned about the kind of risks that actually AI poses. And that's to say because we have been skeptical, actually I much more than you, have been quite skeptical of AI myself. In fact, I actually thought the people who were worried about AI and existential risk were kind of crazy sci-fi type people. And there's a good reason for that, because how many of people here, you use Siri and you get an experience like this?
Siri, set a 9-hour and 50-minute timer.
Playing the Beatles.
So he says, Siri, set a 9-hour and 50-minute timer, and it plays the Beatles, right? It gets our name wrong. It mispronounces street
Siri's
addresses.
a little better than that for me.
And so this is the experience. AI didn't feel like it was exploding, right? They didn't feel like there was much to be concerned about, and it got lots of things wrong. So why does it suddenly feel like AI progress is exploding? Why does it feel like it's going so fast? Well, in 2017...
So we'll take you back to 2017, when there was sort of like Indiana Jones style, a swap that happened. And the thing that we call AI switched to a new engine called Transformers. It's actually around 200 lines of code. And it was remarkably different than what came before in its simplicity. So when I went to college, AI used to have many different subdisciplines, right? There was computer vision, and computer vision had its own textbook, it had its own building. And then over here, there was might be, I don't know, robotics with its own textbook and its own building. And then over here, there was something about music. And if I was a researcher in one field, I honestly couldn't even read a paper in one of the other fields. And what did this mean? This meant that it was a diffuse kind of progress, right? A 1% or 2% increase in computer vision had nothing to do with the increase in, say, robotics. And in 2017, that changed. And suddenly, all of those fields became one field, which was the ability to model language. So the thing that's going to sort of, I think, we want you to walk away with, and that may break your mind, is that when you look out at the world and you see many different AI demos, behind the scenes, they're actually pretty much the same AI demo. And we're going to describe exactly what that means. So what does it mean to treat everything as language? Well, obviously, the text of the internet is a kind of language. And if you can predict what word comes next, fine. But it turns out you can treat almost everything as a kind of language. DNA is sort of obvious. It's just a sequence of base pairs, GTAC, GT. Fine, you treat that as a language, but now you can decode and generate, the language of life. You can treat images as language. It's just a set of pixels, red, green, blue, blue, green, red. And if you learn to treat that as just like text, you can now decode and generate images. Videos are just sequences of images, a kind of language. Code is just a kind of language. Law is just a kind of language. fMRIs become just a kind of language. And the AI lets you decode and translate between any one of them. Now,
I did want to pause here because he didn't mention music in that. And I just, a quick anecdote, when I was doing my grad work, one of my professors was working on music informatics. And that was basically how to encode music into machine readable forms. And it could be either the sheet music side or the recording side. And now with the increase in computer power, you can do these spectrographic things where you convert the sound into an image, right? And basically use that to reconstruct things in the same way that you're reconstructing, an image of a panda or something. And that's the same way the fMRIs are working. Is they're using the imagery, the brain imagery or the X-ray imagery, any of those kind of things to basically that combined with the labeling. Right. Yeah, everything just becomes related through language. It's really amazing.
Right. So, but just so I'm clear, when they say related through language, you mean the prompts are all just you're just talking to it, or do you mean something else?
Well, no. The fact that the vector database is able to basically you translate all of these different modalities into the numerical representations of the vectors. And then, of course, you have all the relations to them. So there's different techniques for translating. There's one called text to vec. There's so there's all these different encoder models that are transforming. Or maybe that's kind of what you would call the transformer. Is it knows how to transform from one modality into another in such a way that then it gets encoded through the semantic relationships of the language model itself. Right. So yeah, it's just once you get it converted into the digits, then all games are off, and it just uses all these semantic relationships through language to then put it all together and make meaning of it.
There are a lot of terms for these things. You might call them large language models or multimodal. They work with many modalities. There isn't like one good term. So we were looking at this and we're like, well, okay, what are these things? These are generative, large language, multimodal models. And we're like, that looks like a golem to me.
If you know the Jewish myth of a golem, which is an inanimate object that is imbued with these emergent new lifelike capabilities. And that's kind of what these things do. The engineers program these large language models, they pump these large language models full of language and data, and what comes out of them are new emergent capabilities that the engineers didn't even know were in there. That's new, that's never happened before. We're gonna get into that.
All right, so let's give some examples of the kinds of things that Golem class AIs can do in the kind of translation. So you guys have all seen probably DALL-E
here it gets a little
or
more
image
good here.
diffusion, like any of these things. You type in text, you create an image. It's what you use to make the music video. Here's an example of translating language into the language of image. So I'll give my favorite example. I typed in Google soup, and this is the image the AI created. It's actually remarkably creative, right? And notice, actually, I want you to really pay attention, because some people will say, oh, these things are just stochastic parrots, there's no real understanding. But judge for yourself, because it knew to use the mascot to represent Google, already sort of clever. It understands that soup is hot and plastic melts in soup. Plastic's melting. And then there's this incredible visual pun of the yellow of the corn matching the yellow of the logo, right? There's actually a lot of semantic information embedded in here. All right, let's do another one. Can you translate the language of fMRI data? What is fMRI? That's sort of like how blood is moving around in your brain. Can we translate the language of fMRI brains to images? So in this experiment, they took human beings, they put them into an fMRI machine, they showed the AI the image that a human was seeing, and then match it to the brain waves, the brain scans of the human. And then they took away the image, and they would say with a new one, given just the brain, can the AI reconstruct what the human being was seeing? So, seeing only the fMRI data, this is what the AI reconstructed.
Not bad.
Right? So, by the way, your visual cortex runs in reverse when you dream, so your dreams are no longer safe. It's also really important to note, this gets to the combinatoric power, the very surprising combinatoric power of AI, that the state of the art in doing this kind of brain image reconstruction is the very same model used for making art, like all those art images. And this is surprising. What should a art AI have to do with reading your brain? And it turns out when you understand that everything is language that can be translated to and from, it has everything to do. And this is not just about images, it can work for your inner monologue. So in this study, they had people watch a video and ask the humans to narrate what they were seeing. And then the AI tried to reconstruct just from the brain readings what the human was thinking. And so I'll give the example. So in this video clip, there's the girl, she gets hit in the back and she gets knocked over. This is what the AI reconstructed. I see a girl, looks just like me, get hit in the back, and then she's knocked off, right? So what we think is no longer, hidden from the outside world.
What this amounts to is...
Matt, were you aware of some of these more outlier studies that have been going on?
Not exactly, but I mean, I figured, all this machine learning is going to be used for medical stuff, and it's going to be way more accurate than anything we can do now. And yeah, just it's pretty wild. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Matrix like stuff.
The increasing legibility of the world. Like if you think about it, to see like a human, you've got your eyeballs, your earlobes, right? And you can have your sensory organs that are evolved from thousands of years ago to let you perceive the world. But when AI is like this huge telescope that lets you see the world in high resolution, and it can see things that we can't see. Another example of that is Wi-Fi radio signals. So this is a paper that took, imagine you've got like two eyeballs into an AI. And into one of the eyeballs of the AI, you plug in a camera feed. So what's going on in this room? Into the other eyeball of the AI, you plug in something that's looking at the radio signals that are bouncing around this room. It turns out that the Wi-Fi radio signals bouncing around this room right now is a kind of language. And they bounce around very differently when there's 250 people in this room than if there is one person in this room. Then if everybody is seated down versus everybody is standing up. And so the question was, if you train the AI to recognize patterns between the images of who's in the room and then the patterns of the Wi-Fi radio signals, the question is, if you close the eyeball of the AI of the camera, could it reconstruct the posture and number of people in the room? And this is what it spit out, right? And the key thing here is we're not showing you, here's 10 random whiz-bang papers from the AI field. We're trying to get you to see that this is all building on a common language. These are not different kinds of systems.
So we should just note, by the way, that Wi-Fi is available everywhere human beings are, right? And so now Wi-Fi routers have been turned into a kind of camera that can see in the dark, that's perfectly tuned for understanding where living beings are, right? So this is, essentially, we have built the authoritarian state apparatus, we just didn't know it. Again, this is the combinatorial power of AI, the ability to translate to and from languages, but good news, that would require hacking into all the existing infrastructure and Wi-Fi routers. That seems like a lot of work, except, computer code is a kind of language. So you can translate from text to computer code. Here's a real example that I tried. GPT, find me a security vulnerability, then write me code to exploit it. So I pasted in some computer code.
Actually, specifically, he said in English, just want you to really all get this, describe any vulnerabilities you may find in the following code, write a Perl script of them. So that's Aza's putting in English into a system, and then the code.
And then it, in around 10 seconds, writes working code that exploits it correctly.
Now, I do want to level set expectations a little bit here, which is that GPT-3 was not very good at finding security vulnerabilities in code. But GPT-4, because you're just pumping the system, the same system with just more data and more compute and more information, more code examples, it is able to find some security vulnerabilities. But it's also limited. It can't find them in lots of code. But as we're about to scale again, 10x with GPT-5, which is coming not very, very long from now, we're about to get many more cyber hacking capabilities. So part of the reason we're giving this presentation is we have to look ahead on the exponential curve, because if it's growing at that rate, we can't regulate what is, we have to regulate where it's going.
I wanted to jump in real quick because there's been some news coverage about in the hacker space that someone has actually built a language model that they're calling Worm GPT that is specifically trained and tuned to be used by hackers to generate malicious bots, codes, all kinds of stuff. So that I think I saw that story a week or two ago. So that this is here. This is definitely here.
I do want to say just quickly here, one of the things people will say is actually this is fantastic because AI will help us find all the security vulnerabilities before code is published. This is true. I actually think it'll help a whole bunch for new code. But here's the problem. Think about all, and I should also note that GPT is not good enough yet to hack Wi-Fi routers. We're safe for a little bit. But think about the number of Wi-Fi routers that are out there, all of the legacy infrastructure running code which has not yet been protected by AI. So the advance of AI opens up a huge new surface area
and how many
of
people don't
vulnerability,
change their password
which
from
the
admin
new AI doesn't help to protect.
router.
And in fact, every time something gets deployed and then new AI comes out, all of the old stuff suddenly becomes more vulnerable.
So a lot of you are aware of deepfakes and the ability to synthesize voices and so on. What you may not know is that as of at least a few months ago, what you only need now is 3 seconds of someone's voice before you can use 3 seconds of someone's voice to autocomplete and speak in their voice. So here's just 2 demos of that really quickly. You're about to hear a woman who's actually speaking in kind of a robotic way, but I think it's a real human. So up until the dotted line, you'll hear a real person's voice. After the dotted line, it's all generated.
Of people are, in 9 cases out of 10, mere spectacle reflections of the actuality of things.
Right. You can't
so
tell.
It's
but they are
indistinguishable.
impressions of something different.
And here's one more demo of a piano. So the first 3 seconds are real, then, so indistinguishable.
I'm really curious
This
about
is being
that
generated
one.
by a computer, right? And we talked about this and we thought, people are going to use this to do scams. And we made this presentation, and within a few days of after putting this in our presentation, this actually had happened. The Washington Post wrote it up. People are using this. You can call up someone's kid, say, hello, and then don't say anything, get 3 seconds of the voice, call mom or granddad, say, Mom, Granddad, I forgot my social security number. Could you give it to me, right? So we are not ready for a world in which content-based authentication, where the image of a person or the sound of a person's voice is enough to authenticate the reality of that person.
And that example he just gave? Real.
Yeah, this happened just 3 months ago. And of course, this doesn't just exist with the sounds of voice. This is also now happening real-time in video. How many of you have used the new TikTok filters and that have these hyper beautification filters? How many people have seen these? No one. Okay, great. Watch this video. As you watch the video, I want you to notice when she pushes on her lips, okay? So watch her lips when she pushes on them.
I can't believe this is a filter. The fact that this is what filters have evolved into is actually crazy to me. I grew up with the dog filter on Snapchat, and now this filter gave me lip fillers. This is what I look like in real life. Are you kidding me?
This and next year are the years that video and photographic evidence cease to work, and that when you are talking to someone, you do not know whether it is
and it's in real time,
either their voice or their video. And it's not like any of our institutions have had any time to catch up with this change.
So,
hey Chris, is there any?
If I was the Chinese Communist Party and I wanted to
with like the whole cryptography tagging, or like, I don't know, when you put that filter on there, is there any kind of metadata, or can that all be hidden by like TikTok or whatever?
As far as I know, it's all buried in TikTok's filters. I mean, I'm sure they've got some controls on, and you can turn it up and turn it down. But one thing I did notice, or I saw somewhere, is that TikTok has it turned on by default,
right?
At like 5% for everybody. So
that is so weird to me, but it makes sense that they would do that. I think there was also something about Zoom a while back. It wasn't AI, but it was something about like the lens.
Well, they've introduced AI backgrounds.
Sure. Yeah.
So because it's been able to blur you and do that, and I just saw an email from them where they're letting you do some AI generated backgrounds.
So that's getting better. I'll have to try that out.
The Zoom one has got a lot of interesting AI stuff with the summaries and other things like that. But if you expand to their full environment package, I guess.
Right. Okay. Well.
All right. Let's. But yeah, that TikTok filter was crazy because it could be implemented in Zoom, or let's say you can have another program in between your camera and the Zoom app to intercept the video, and then you could have that be doing anything.
And Zoom wouldn't even know.
Cloning. And Zoom wouldn't even know. Yeah. Because I've got some virtual camera software that I use with OBS, so you can basically take your camera, do overlays and all this kind of stuff, and it just basically appears as the camera to all of these different apps.
Right.
So it's trivial to intercept the video and do something with it before it goes out to any of these chats and video chat apps. Yeah.
Over the United States going into the 2024 election, no matter what you regulate in terms of which content moderation or transparency, or if you're following this debate, what I could do is ship a Biden and Trump filter to all of the US. So now every American who posts on TikTok can instantly have the likeness, sound. Have you seen Being John Malkovich, where everyone suddenly becomes Malkovich? This would be like Being Biden and Trump, where everyone, and it would turn your society into a cacophony of nonsense. And it had nothing to do with free speech or content moderation.
That is not illegal. Almost always you'll hear people talk about the harms of AI as bad people doing bad things that are illegal, and it misses all of the harms we're talking about.
I'll just say very briefly, would you have allowed the Soviet Union to control television programming for the entire Western world during the Cold War? I think that's all you need to know for that example. Okay, really quickly. So this is also being used by people themselves. So this is a 23-year-old Snapchat influencer who's using OpenAI to create an
sorry.
AI avatar version of herself that talks like her. She's a very attractive young woman, talks like her.
So just to jump back for a second, what he was saying about Russia is because it's TikTok that is owned by ByteDance, which is a Chinese big tech firm. So that's basically, so that kind of goes to some of the criticisms that our government has been having, where they even banned TikTok from government employee uses, at least on work devices.
Gotcha.
Will actually interact with people. Basically, I'm your girlfriend as a service, and I'll charge $1 per minute, right? These are new questions that this is causing for how our society is going to work.
Oh, and they don't mention this, but this just came up. There are several companies that are for a fee, you can go in and they will scan you and record you speaking, and they will basically generate an AI avatar for your loved ones after you die.
Wow, that's crazy. That's, again, Black Mirror. I feel like it's so cliche, but I just keep rattling off sci-fi.
And that's one of the things. Yeah, it's all about, and I think he gets into it a little bit more, is like persuasion and intimacy was the big thing. Is if you can generate intimacy, not physical, but psychological intimacy, you're so much more open to or susceptible to other ideas and things like that, because there's a certain amount of trust that comes into it. And that with the TikTok AI bot, that's your new friend that's always there. And we've watched some of that before.
Right.
Yeah, this is definitely giving us some of the darker side of things here.
Now, this can also be used in nefarious ways. And by the way, if there's any journalists in the room, we are showing this to you as an example to arm you, so that you understand the kinds of things that can be done here. This is one of those ones that you don't want to go off broadcasting around the world. If I wanted to cause a bank run, imagine something that I could do. I could go find all the people who are online tweeting about the SVB bank collapse. You remember the SVB bank run that happened back in March? I could generate images of people standing in line in front of Wells Fargo, Citibank, Bank of America, right? And then I could actually target those images directly at the people who are hyper-sharers of that content. And there was an academic paper written saying during the run period, we find that the intensity of Twitter conversation about a bank predicts stock market losses at the hourly frequency, right? So this is the kind of stuff that you can do. It's not just misinformation for our democracy.
And this is where, and Twitter should be a big leader on this as soon as possible, is with the content credential stuff. Like any picture on Twitter should have a content credentials button, so you can see where it came from, who made it, and then you can immediately know because as it works right now, it usually takes a couple of hours or something, as he says, before everybody starts to pick up that, so it blows up and then it dissipates as people figure it out. But if you had the creds on the images, you could nip it in the bud before it even blows up.
We have to really think deeply about the kinds of vulnerabilities that this introduces in our society.
So I think we'll make a prediction. I wish this was a bold prediction, but I actually think it's just a very obvious prediction, which is that 2024 will be the last human election. What do we mean by that? Well, we just gave you the example of the Snapchat influencer that made sort of a digital version, a counterfeit version of herself, right? In the very near future, when you're interacting with somebody on Reddit or on LinkedIn or on Signal or on Tinder, you will not know whether they're real or not. They can type, they can talk to you, they can send you images of themselves with other people. It's easy to print counterfeit humans. So there's a stat that I'm sure has come up a couple times even at this conference, that it only takes 3% of a population to make a mass movement. What does this mean? Well, if you create a technology that confers power, you start a race. What is that race going to be? It's going to be a race from our foreign adversaries. It'll be a race from every corporation, every special interest group, to instantiate, to print, that 3% of a population as counterfeit humans. And just imagine the influx of that by 2028. Like, there is no way that a democracy in the current form can possibly survive that.
So this has actually also been used in a real election. This is in Toronto. This is a fake image of fake homeless people sitting on the side of a building. And this is why we're starting to see this actually really happen. And this is new since we started first giving this presentation. Now,
and did you hear the news story of DeSantis using a cloned Trump voice in one of his ads already?
No, I haven't seen that.
Wow. Yeah. So these guys are already playing with fire.
Definitely.
Already doing it.
What our friend Yuval Harari, who wrote the book *Sapiens*, kind of summarizes is what nuclear weapons are to the physical world, these generative AI language models are, these golems are, to the virtual or symbolic world. The ability to hack language, understand it at scale, and then manipulate language, whether that language is images, video, text, DNA, chemistry, law, finding loopholes in law. Okay. This is the end of a little chapter on some of the horror show of the dark sides of AI. And I want to just say, we are walking you through deliberately the dark sides so that you understand what we would need to do to adequately deal with these problems. If we held this back and people didn't know this, then we're going to fly blindly into just releasing all this stuff. So I want you to understand why we're doing this. We care about getting to the solution. We're going to get there by the end.
So one final thing to wrap up this section. And this is the point we were making with Yuval when we wrote a New York Times op-ed with him, is that human civilization runs on language, like money is based on language, code, religion, corporations, that even democracy is conversation. Conversation is language. If you hack language, there's nothing that says that democracy can continue to survive. So, let's dive into some of the abilities of these Golem AI.
So Matt, I think that's a really good kind of intro to where they're going. And in the interest of time, do you want to kind of leave it there?
Yeah, sure. I think that was a good overview. I mean, that's the big first half of what they're talking about. And I think even with that, we can still. I think it'll be a good juxtaposition with Andreessen's point of view. And I actually watched Lex Friedman did an interview with Yoel, the guy they were just mentioning, making the Newt comment. And yeah, he's got some pretty scary things to say too. So we could kind of just bounce back and forth a little bit as the sides discuss, so we can get a fuller idea of where the good things are happening, where we need to look out for the bad things as we go along. I think we're going to be on this ride for a while now. I mean, we just started going. Yeah, absolutely. I just can't. My mind just keeps going back to what can we do, like concretely, to set standards, or like the info button on images. Could we do something like that on our sites, just to kind of like?
Absolutely. But the main thing is what they were mentioning with the rule number 3 is if you don't coordinate, you can't get it done. And they use the nuclear test ban treaties and things like that. But you have to get everybody involved, because if only some people are using the quote unquote trust tools like the credentials or watermarks or anything like that, if only some people are using them, it's just not going to be as effective.
I wonder, could we use maybe Adobe's tools, like Adobe's format, you think? Because our images would be coming from PDF sometimes, or straight from Photoshop. So like, if we could just kind of capture that, and then in the, what is it called? The log, it would show like created in Photoshop, put into InDesign, upload to WordPress.
Well, actually, we could do even better than that. Because if we could do something like, because the tools that are used to actually do the blockchain edition of the metadata are completely open source, and they even have like command line versions. So basically what we could do is James could write a script that would tag all the images with the content credentials, basically based upon the authorship of the PDF.
Right.
Because the publishers can put authorship and everything like that. So you could get that, and you could put it directly in as this is the author, or whatever the fields are that go into that. We could apply it as we're processing on the server. And I think that would definitely be a possibility.
That's interesting.
Instead of having to go through the Photoshop route. I mean, that's great for the artist, but for us, basically anything, it's at some point, anything we put up on the website that's image related, it would be great to have the credentials available.
Right.
You know, we put it on there regardless of what the customer's doing, because we know they're the customer, we're putting it on, we can go ahead and add the credentials for them.
Right.
Which actually would be a good selling point, I think.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, no, you got me thinking now. I want to get James's thoughts on this. You know, if this is something that I don't know, would be relatively easy or what, but
I mean, it's going to be kind of like Betamax versus VHS, Laserdisc versus DVD for a while. You know, they're going to have to settle on some standards so that we can then, you know, everybody can be on the same playing field, playing by the same rules. And if you break the rules, then everybody knows it.
Right,
you know?
right, exactly. Yeah, man. Sounds good. Okay, so let's.
Well, this was a good. This was cool. I appreciate us still taking time
Friday
to do this.
afternoon thing. You know, I don't know if people will be that interested. I think we want to keep it relatively short. Like 30 minutes is probably good. So, you know, we'll think about curating the next one, but we'll pick up on this on Monday.
Sure. Okay, Matt. I hope you have a good
yes,
weekend.
sir. You too. Thanks a lot, man.
All the best to you and your family and all that kind of stuff.
Man.
Take care, man.
I hope you don't get too hot up in Rochester there.
All
right. Take care, man.
All right. Bye-bye.